Hi, and welcome to another episode of Iraqi Nutrition Podcast. Today I have with me Andrew Vigotsky. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. And today we're going to talk a bit about foam rolling. And before we dive into the questions, could you give us a brief introduction about yourself, your background, and how you got interested in this industry?
Sure. So I was actually originally a software engineer, and at work I found myself just reading exercise and nutrition research rather than doing my actual coding projects. So I decided to go back to school for kinesiology, and I did that in 2012, 2013-ish. I ended up finishing my bachelor's in 2015 at Arizona State University for kinesiology, and right now I'm applying to graduate programs for biomedical engineering.
Interesting. And you've published around 12 studies. Is it 12?
Yeah, around 12. I think it's 13 papers that are currently published. Uh, two or three papers have been accepted and are forthcoming, and we have a whole bunch more in the works.
Interesting. And you did a lot of those studies with Bret Contreras?
Yeah, so when I was in Arizona for my undergrad, Brad put up a posting that he was looking for an assistant. I applied. He ended up loving me, and I guess it's been history since.
Okay, interesting. Are you involved in his glute lab in any way with the clients there?
No, I'm not. I was there for a little bit when I was in undergrad. I assisted with data collection for his PhD, but right now I'm back in New York, taking prerequisites for grad school and doing research actually in Brad Schoenfeld's lab in addition to the Hospital for Special Surgery.
Okay, excellent. So, is there any sports you've been involved in yourself?
Yeah, so growing up, I played baseball, and then in high school, I played soccer and lacrosse at the varsity level. I ended up getting injured my senior year, and that's when I first started getting into lifting. So by the end of my freshman year of college, I started competing in bodybuilding. I've competed in, I think, three shows in 2012, 2013, or 2011. Yeah, 2011, 2012. I did all right, but ever since I've just been too busy to compete with coursework and research and such. But maybe I'll get back into it someday if I have the time.
Okay. Soccer, that's not it's not usual to hear people in the States playing soccer. So, what's your favorite team? Because soccer
Uh,
is like a huge thing, especially here in Europe.
right. Uh, I didn't really watch or pay attention enough to the EPL and stuff like that to really have a favorite team. I did watch the EPL on occasion, but I wasn't a diehard fan of like Arsenal or anything like that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually a die-hard fan of Newcastle United, and they're not doing really well at the moment in the relegation battle and struggling really bad. Especially like they spent like 85 million pounds this year, and they're still struggling. So, but hopefully they have a new manager coming, or they have appointed a new manager. So hopefully they'll get out of that drop zone soon. Okay, let's dive into the questions. And like the first question is, what is the, like you see when you go to the gym, you see a lot of people using the foam roller. So what is the idea and the purpose behind using the foam roller?
So the idea is that it's kind of like a self massage, and that afterwards you'll be able, or you'll have an increased range of motion than what you had before you foam rolled. So it basically allows people to increase their range of motion, or it allows them to obtain a pain-free range of motion, depending on the person.
And is there other equipment that's also usually used except the foam roller?
Some people have roller sticks, which are kind of like hard plastic with a bunch of little plastic rings. So you roll it, and you can do it like sitting down, do it on your quad, and you may be able to get more pressure if you do that. And there's some research on those in addition to the traditional foam rollers. And some people also use things like PVC pipes and other foam rollers that have almost like little notches sticking out So the idea is that it applies more pressure to the muscle.
Yeah, it's also I see also some people use like lacrosse balls and golf balls and stuff like that because
Yeah,
of the side. Yeah,
lacrosse balls, tennis balls, and now you see these power lifters using these like 100, 200 pound metal cylinders, and they'll just roll it on their hamstrings and stuff. And it seems like things are progressing in terms of trying to get as much pressure on the muscle as possible. It's pretty interesting.
yeah. So is there any, because a lot of arguments for using the foam roller is that it can influence the fascia in the muscle. Is there any evidence that it actually does that?
To date, I've seen no convincing evidence that suggests that. In fact, all evidence I've seen in my eyes points to neurological mechanisms. One specific study that suggests it's not fascial is a study that came out, or a model that came out in 2008 by Chaudhry. And basically, they found it would take between 400 kilograms to 900 kilograms of mass. So I guess convert that to newtons if you want force, but in order to influence the fascia by even 1%. So that's for both compression and shear.
Okay.
In terms of neurological mechanisms, though, there were two papers that came out last year that I thought were pretty interesting. One was by Grieve et al., and what they did was they had people roll the bottoms of their feet with a tennis ball, and they had them do a sit and reach. Now, the authors of that study, I guess, purported that it was the fascia that influenced their sit and reach score because they reach after rolling the plantar fascia. But I think that's kind of a non-local neurophysiological mechanism. And then there was another study by, I'm probably going to butcher his name, Abu Darda or something along those lines. He's out of Memorial University. But what they found was foam rolling one leg will increase the pain pressure tolerance of that leg, and it'll also increase the pain pressure tolerance of the opposite limb.
Okay.
So to me, that says it's something that's central in origin, and it does something with pain modulation.
Okay. And when it comes to effect on performance, does it have like is there any evidence that using the foam roller can have any positive effect on performance?
Currently, most of the evidence suggests that it has no effect on performance. Something to keep in mind, though, is these studies are all of a particular nature. They're mostly maximum force output or something like vertical jump height. So it's something that's fast and it's something that's short duration. Now, I, along with a few other researchers, have a couple papers in review. What we did was we had people perform knee extensions to failure using different doses of foam rolling, and it appears that there's a dose-dependent effect wherein more foam rolling would result in less repetitions performed. So this is a totally different focus in terms of muscular endurance as opposed to muscular strength or power output. So that's something to keep in mind in an area of research that's still developing.
Okay. And like when you it like typically at my gym and a lot of other gyms that I've visited, like you see a lot of people, they spend a lot of time using these foam rollers, and I've had like colleagues and friends that spent up like 20-25 minutes doing foam rollers before even touching the barbell. What's your opinion about that practices and spending so much time doing these movements?
I do think a lot of people overdo it, and I think it comes from this mindset that people think they have to do this to stay healthy or have to do this to maintain mobility. And I think if people need to keep doing this in order to maintain their mobility, then they need to reevaluate. So reevaluate your training program, reevaluate your form, so on and so forth. But with that, I think this kind of anecdote from one of my studies kind of confirms this. So I would ask subjects, how often do you foam roll? And most of them, if not all of them, responded, not as much as I should. So there is this dogma that you do have to foam roll to stay healthy or to be in optimal shape, but I don't think that's the case.
Okay, excellent.
Yep.
Yeah. Like I've mentioned this before we started the interview that I had I had major surgery 3 years ago, and like when I got back into the gym, I had so tight glutes that I barely could do any squats or anything else. So I started actually with doing lunges, and got like the movement from doing that exercise, but I also added in a bit of foam rolling. And I would say that for the first 10 days that I did the foam rolling, I did have an effect because my muscles were so tight. But after that, I wouldn't say that I had any more benefits from using it. So in that scenario, I can see how it can be used. But like you said, I agree that I think that a lot of people they overdo it, and you're basically spending like up to 30 or 40% more time in the gym doing these things, and you probably could get the benefits that you wanted just by doing some resistance exercises.
Yep, I completely agree. So I guess the idea with what may have happened with you is that you foam roll, you can increase your range of motion during the preceding exercise. Then that exercise helps you kind of reinforce that range of motion, and therefore you get like a chronic, long lasting benefit. Most of the chronic foam rolling research that I've seen at this point in time does not support the use of foam rolling for chronically increasing range of motion. So I think that's where people are going to see the benefits. And so after you foam roll, just reinforce that range of motion through resistance exercise, and I think it should stick.
Okay, excellent. I know you published a study last year where you looked at foam rolling for the anterior thigh. Could you tell us about the purpose of the study, how it was designed, what results you found, and what the conclusion of the study was?
Okay, sure. So we kind of replicated methods from an earlier study to an extent. That is the foam rolling methods from McDonald's et al. 2013 to foam roll the anterior thigh. What they did was they looked at knee flexion range of motion with the hip in an extended position. But what we did was we used the Thomas test, which is basically a test of both hip extension and knee flexion. And it's often used as a proxy for, I guess you could say, rectus femoris extensibility, or I think a better term is rectus femoris stiffness. But what we did was we used motion capture one because it's a more objective measure than using a goniometer, and two, it can't be influenced by me, the investigator. But what we saw was there was no change in rectus femoris length from before foam rolling to after foam rolling. And what this suggests to me is that there's no effect on the actual tissue itself. In addition, they performed dynamic stretching beforehand. So whether or not dynamic stretching influenced this result, I'm not sure, but it does suggest that there aren't any mechanical effects greater than what you can obtain via dynamic stretching.
Okay, excellent. So to sum it all up, what's the take home message in regards to the research that we currently have on foam rolling?
In my eyes, the take home message would be foam rolling can increase range of motion acutely. It probably doesn't work through mechanical mechanisms, that is, through manipulation of the fascia or anything like that. I think it works through neurophysiological mechanisms. And there is some weak evidence to suggest that it may be helpful for recovery, so doing it post workout, but that's kind of extrapolated from the massage research. And other than that, there's no reason to keep doing it day in and day out. There's no reason to do it throughout the day if you're feeling tight. I do think it's possible to become over reliant on it or possibly create a dependence on it.
Yeah,
So
but can it have any like if you can it have any detrimental effect to continue? Like you said that it didn't have a advantage or a performance enhancing effect, but can it be detrimental to performance to actually do too much foam rolling?
um, Theoretically, I think it's possible due to the mechanisms by which I think it works, because I think it works through neurophysiological mechanisms. There's one specifically that Todd Hargrove has written about called descending noxious inhibitory control. So that works by pressure basically sets off nociceptors, which sends a signal to the brain. The brain will realize it's not threatening and it will release stuff like endogenous opioids or endocannabinoids, which are your brain's equivalent of something like morphine or marijuana. And that will inhibit pain. But the problem is if those are released too much, theoretically it could create kind of a dependence. So you'll kind of want this stimulus more and more, and you'll need more and more pressure in order to obtain that same stimulus. So that's purely hypothetical, and I think more research should be done in that area. But if you can obtain the range of motion you need through foam rolling, then use it, but don't use it too much to the point where you're using it for 20 minutes before every workout, because I think there is a point where it becomes excessive.
Okay, excellent. All right, Andrew, that was awesome, and thank you so much for taking the time to do this short interview. Are you active on any social media?
Sure, I post on Twitter every once in a while. My handle is A Vigotsky, first letter and then last name. And then I post on Facebook occasionally as well.
Okay, excellent. I'll put links in the description to your Twitter account. And once again, thank you so much for doing this interview, and have a nice day.
Thank you.